Hey, what's going on, internet? This is Milkstarz here, and today I'm going to be going over a question that I recently got asked over email. The question was, Milkstarz, how did you get started to become a web developer? What steps did you take? That is a really good question and a good story. I started coding when I was 9 years old. I had the awesome pleasure of going to this coding computer camp in New York called Summer Tech, and I loved it. It was great. I enjoyed every second of it. When I first started, I did a whole bunch of animation, which is like making drawings and animating them to do a whole bunch of cool stuff using Flash, which was really big back then. I did some intro to like Visual Basic, some low level stuff, nothing really that interesting. And I thought it was kind of cool at the time, and I did it for fun. When I turned 14 and 15, or 14-ish, I signed up for the web development course that they had. And that's where I kind of really found out about web development. And when I was 15, I started to work there as a web development instructor, as a counselor at the camp. And from there, I was really able to get firm grasp of the foundation, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, mainly those 4 languages, to make very, very simple websites. And from that, I was able to just do a whole bunch of practice projects for myself, and then I left that. When I decided that I was going to college, I had this idea in my head that I was actually going to be an air traffic controller. And no, just for reference sake, an air traffic controller is not the guy that waves the orange cone saying, "This plane here, go this way, go this way." The air traffic controller is the person that's up in the tower that tells everybody where to go. I ended up going to college for 4 years to become an air traffic controller, and because of things with the FAA that are just completely out of my control, I ended up not becoming one. I decided that I didn't want to do it in my 3rd year of college. So in my 3rd year of college, I hit this point where I was just like, what am I going to do? What's going to be the next step for me? And I knew that being a web developer was a thing. Like, I knew it was something that paid decently. And so I started checking it out a little bit more. I took 2 courses on Udemy, and I started looking at a couple of things on Free Code Camp. And I actually found out that, the more challenging it got, it actually excited me. Like, I would find myself working on a project for hours, late into the night. I'm just like, oh snap, maybe I really like this. Maybe I should do that. I ended up taking, in my senior year, I took an intro to software programming class, and I took, I think, 1 object-oriented programming class, and that was all that I had in terms of education and programming. So once I got out of college, I knew that I had a whole bunch of projects under my belt. I had done some freelancing for a couple of startups that were in the area, and I had this portfolio ready. And I knew that I was ready to start applying for jobs, and I was scared at first because everybody says that interviews are really, really hard. Like, you're going to be tested on data structures and algorithms no matter what you do. And yeah, that's the case for if you're working at the big companies, like Google is one that really you hear about, Facebook, Amazon, etc. I ended up just going to Free Code Camp and going over not only their challenges, but I went over their curriculum of all the stuff that they had. And from that, I was able to get a good idea of what to expect in an interview. And the interview questions were actually not that hard. So, they would have your easy questions like, oh, what's a class in CSS and what is it used for? How do you define a class compared to ID in CSS? And then they started asking me PHP questions like, what's the difference between an include and a require in PHP? What's the different HTTP methods that you can use to pull from a REST client, etc., etc. The list goes on. And they were actually, they're all questions that if you practice web development, it would be like a no-brainer. And I was shocked. It was amazing. So after that, after going through all these interviews, developing a list of a bunch of interview questions that were most commonly asked on these interviews, I was actually getting a good amount of interviews, and I was able to choose the one that I thought would give me the most chance for growth. So that's where I am now. I'm now a full stack engineer mid-level at AT&T. That's how I got started as a web developer. I wasn't the smartest guy in school. I had like a 2.5 GPA in college. I was kind of just going through school because I just wanted to start working. And that was the path that everybody told me that I should do. So that's how I got started to be a web developer. It's not hard. People have this preconceived notion that you need to be a genius to do it. It's really not that hard. There's just like a couple of tags. I've taught 15-year-olds how to make websites, and some of the stuff that they've made is like blown my mind, like how fast they picked it up. So if a 15-year-old can do it, anybody can do it. I'd really recommend getting started to learn web development, and I hope that my advice or my path could help guide you on what you should do in your future.